if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because it's just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people, start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning. Yeah, morning. And welcome to 30-minute reviews. I am Adam. We're here today to talk about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, if you've been following along, we have been in the lead up to next week's Agatha all along, rewatching the appearances of, the most recent appearances of Wanda. And the reason for that is I still feel like Agatha All Along is a lengthy experiment in how much extra work can we do? How much, how much extra do we have to put on to getting Wanda resurrected? Because last we saw Wanda, she had overdosed from rock at the end of this movie. And by rock I mean, she got crushed to death by stones, not, like crack. She literally crushed herself, presumably to death on that. Now, my issue is watching this, and we've talked about this a lot over the last few weeks. I don't think the intent when they set out to do the post Endgame MCU, I would say there's a very strong chance that Marvel intended for Wanda to be the first big overarching bad guy. And I think there is some evidence to this in the, in what we see from how things kind of line up. And namely, it's the fact that we have to look at this in this broader context. This idea that Marvel was not in a situation to make a concrete public plan about what they were doing in a world where, they may be getting the Fox characters back. The X-Men, the Fantastic Four, all that kind of stuff. So the question is, where do you go to try and get a moment with the same emotional resonance as, as the end of Endgame? How do you do that? And it's you take a character we've known for a long time and make them the bad guy. And how do you do that quickly? You use Wanda. So because Wanda is a clear way to do this, that makes a lot of sense. And when you watch this movie and watch Quantumania, there are a lot of weird similarities between the way they treat Wanda and the way they treat Kang the Conqueror. Namely, when you watch that, you're like, that's a little strange. Why is Kang the Conqueror it is a solo movie for another hero. They have a very hard time dispatching the hero we know. A very hard time. Getting Wanda, like, it takes a lot for one person to take down one version of it. Like, it takes a lot for Ant-Man and Wasp to take down Kang and Cassie. It's a involved process, and they succeed, but it takes a lot. And then you have, this idea of, Scott's very conservative. Like, I don't think we've seen the last of him. And it's kind of the same thing here, where it's like, look, we are dealing with a situation where it's likely that Wanda would have returned, as this incursion is happening. I think that the thing is, as you watch this movie, and I have a police truck or a fire truck driving by me, if you hear sirens, the idea that you're kind of stuck with is who makes the most sense to be the bad guy in a world where you can't use the Fox characters for Secret Wars. And I think that there's a clear answer in Wanda. And that's kind of what WandaVision sets up. And again, we've talked about this idea that, like, WandaVision works very well if you don't watch Multiverse of Madness. And it's not Multiverse of Madness who doesn't understand WandaVision. It's WandaVision who's being changed on the fly to accommodate the fact that this character is no longer going to be the overarching bad guy. And because that change is kind of made toward the end, it's like, oh, well, why, how do we adjust for this? But regardless, the point I'm trying to make is, how do you handle this if you're Marvel Studios at this point? Because when you watch Multiverse of Madness, I don't think Multiverse of Madness is bad. I think it just does a lot of legwork to set up stakes in a universe that are never going to pay off. And we've seen no intention of them getting close to paying off. I think that all the stuff with America is not the most riveting, and I think Strange's arc in general is not great in this movie, where it's like, at the end of the day, he doesn't, like, the big thing that the big issue that Doctor Strange has is needing to be the one, like, and they say it so many times, you always need to be the one holding the knife. Like, that is the thing that they say over and over in this movie, and it's the moral of the first one. It's why the big moment for Strange in the first Doctor Strange is them doing the surgery on the Ancient One, and him deciding, I'm not going to be the one to do the surgery. I'm not the best one to do this. I have to let someone else do it. And, like, you could argue, like, yeah, that happened in Infinity War and Endgame too, where it's like, yeah, he didn't make the sacrifice. And it's like, yeah, but again, we're still the self-serving thing. And that's kind of the question that gets posited early in the movie. This idea of, very early on, we get this moment with the doctor, where it's like, yeah, my dog died. Oh, and also my brother. Like, it's a great little comedic beat. And he asks the question, was there another, was that really the only way? Was that really the only way you could save everyone, was by doing this thing exactly the way it happened and letting Thanos win? And it's an interesting question to approach, but they never really do anything with it. Because they address that there was another way. And that is, and even then, it's kind of like asterisk, where it's like, yeah, there was another way, but this was another way that required them to use the Darkhold, which was not exactly in play at the time, because I'm fairly certain Agatha had it. I don't know where the Darkhold was. They don't really explain that, but it's like, well, the Darkhold was in play, and that was what was needed to defeat Thanos. But then it's like, also, it's like, what about the fact that you also had the Illuminati? Like, the team that faced off against Thanos for 830 something, 831, 839, whatever the universe was, like, that that universe inherently has a different lineup of characters who face off to save the universe. And that's fundamentally what kind of sets them apart. And it's like, okay, so you have Black Bolt, you have, who is the other big one? Like, okay, so like Black Bolt is there. You have Professor X. You have Captain Marvel, which obviously they had Captain. Like, all of these things that were in play for them to do here are so different from what the MCU proper has, that it's like, how do you even compare the two to say, like, well, there was another way, and Strange took the way that shouldn't have been it. And just saying at the end, the only, like, oh, well, at the end he did the right thing, and at the end he wasn't the one holding the knife, because he let America be the one to get the final blow on Wanda, and show Wanda what she was doing was wrong. Okay, great, but also take into consideration, at the time, it's not like Strange did that by choice. Like, it's not that he did that because it was the best scenario or the best way to handle it. It was literally, he had no other option. He was stuck, marooned in a dying universe, and he's like, well, I can do this, and I have this dying corpse body I can use that somehow rapidly decomposed. Like, it's not like he learns that there. And then we get to the end of the movie with the post-credit, which I think is arguably the thing in this movie that kind of, puts that finer point on it, is the moment at the end when he goes, when he has that moment screaming in the street, when the eye opens up because he opened the Darkhold. The Darkhold has been allegedly destroyed. I think the Darkhold hasn't actually been destroyed. And it's like, it was destroyed across the entire multiverse, and it's like, how? So the idea that, like, you have the Darkhold there and it's doing its, because he used it, now all of a sudden he has, he has this power, like, and he's going to the Dark Dimension, and Clea's like, hey, let's go to the Dark Dimension because an incursion's happening. And then at that point you're like, well, he obviously hasn't learned anything, but he doesn't tell anyone. Like, he fucks off to the Dark Dimension, and he's just like, I'm gonna go and do this because I have to save the day. And it's like, you would think that, like, a universe, like, seeing the repercussions of this, seeing the fear of the Illuminati in what was it, I think it was 838, 616 and 838, and seeing the fear in the Illuminati of an incursion in 838, and then going to the dying universe where not Strange Supreme is kind of hanging out, like, that whole thing is kind of like, why was that, why is he okay with this? It's just one of those things where it's like, I watch it and I'm kind of just a little confused, where it's like, okay, so now he's like, you have this thing, and it's this dangerous that it's going to destroy, all of creation. This random woman shows up to you on the street from the Dark Dimension dressed like she came out of a goth, like, a Hot Topic, and she's like, by the way, Stephen Strange, there's an incursion happening, we have to go stop it. And you don't even have a moment to sit there and be like, well, we're doing, we should probably alert the Avengers or alert someone to this, like, and not just fuck off on our own and try to solve the problem without telling anyone. It feels like a complete misunderstanding of how to handle that. And I think fundamentally, if the thing that Doctor Strange has to learn by the end of this movie, that's what I'm looking at. Where does Strange begin? Where does he end? He begins and ends in the exact same place, which is a huge problem for a movie called Doctor Strange. Unless you're saying he's meant to be fundamentally static, which is not exactly a heroic trait. Especially when the trait that is remaining static is something that's shown to have drastic negative repercussions. It's this idea that, like, okay, so if he's going to go off into this alternate, go off and try to solve this problem by himself, like, clearly that's not the solution here, but he's doing it anyway. it just feels a little bit strange to me, no pun intended, that that's kind of how the movie ends, especially considering what they're trying to say about the character and what the narrative through line is through the entire thing. So what else have we got? Like, and let's talk about the Wanda issue. Like, yes, if you watch WandaVision, and then a year and a half later when this comes out you watch this, it's very easy to look at WandaVision and be like, well, WandaVision did all this great work, but Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness kind of undoes it, because then she's just kind of this, I'm here because I want my kids, give me my kids back, and all that. She made peace at the end, and now she just wants her family back. And there are a few things missing from this movie that I think come down the line, and then when you take into consideration the other projects that were announced, where this goes, and how that would work. So when we left WandaVision, Vision's out there somewhere. There is Vision with Vision's memories out there somewhere. And the idea that, like, she's going to this alternate universe, trying to find, you know, and of course it's 838, this version of reality where she's trying to find her kids, like, she finds this version of her happy life, but without Vision, and is just trying to take the kids. She wants to live there and have the kids and have that life. And I think we addressed this enough, especially in the finale, this idea that, like, Wanda, the ending of WandaVision is should have been played a lot more tragic. And I think that that's kind of the issue that I have with WandaVision more than this movie. I think WandaVision plays the end of it with Wanda as the hero when she's really not. And if you look at it through that lens where Wanda's not the hero, she's a villain defeated and going into hiding, and then this is her re-emergence, it's like, oh, this movie works a lot better with that lens. And if you look at it where it's like, and again, it's not the viewer's fault, it's Marvel's fault for kind of playing the end of that movie, that show, so weirdly. Where it's like, oh, and now here's Wanda's backstory. Oh, and here's how Wanda's always had this kind of issue. And usually she had someone there for her. She had Pietro there when her parents died. She had Vision there. And then it would have been too expensive. But she had Steve there. She had Clint there. She had all these other people there when Pietro died. And then when Vision dies, there's just no one. Clint goes back home with his family. Captain America is now 1,000,000 years old. Like, he's, he looks like Joe Biden at the end of Avengers Endgame. And it's just one of those things where it's like, why? Like, that's kind of where she is. And then you get to this point where it's like, oh, and that's why she reacts this way. And you get it. It's not an excuse, but you get it. So you have this woman who is incredibly powerful and doesn't understand the power she wields. So you end up with now Agatha, who's coming in and is like, I want the power. I know what can be done with this, and I want that power for myself. And I think the issue was the heel turn for Agatha kind of does it. And it's the Agatha All Along song, which is the name of the show. This idea that, like, oh, well, Agatha was behind the whole thing. But really, was she, though? Because not really. Agatha really, was just kind of there and trying to figure out how to make the most of the situation she's in. Like, if they played it where Agatha was more in an anti-heroic role, where it's like, yeah, she wants the power, but not, like, she wants to kill Wanda, which will inherently put her in an antagonistic role to the character the viewer already cares about. But if that's the case, if you guys do, she wants to kill Wanda to stop the power of Scarlet Witch from going out, like, the idea of Wanda outsmarting her and slowly winning, like, that triumphant moment for Wanda at the end of episode 9 when she seals Agatha, in this prison of her own mind, like, that would be a great way to end the show, especially if you play it tragic. This is Wanda's villain origin story, and this is Agatha trying to stop the rise of the Scarlet Witch. That works better for especially for what comes after, because then you get the moment where it's like, oh, we know she's really still evil, and it's like, because of how poorly defined the Darkhold is in WandaVision, when you get to the end of that show and she's sitting there and we see her astral projecting and still reading the Darkhold, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, so she's already more powerful than Doctor Strange, and she's learning more dark magic. But the Darkhold doesn't exactly get characterized as like, this is an incredibly evil thing that's going to slowly corrupt those who use it and make them more and more evil. Had that been better articulated, you get a better product in Multiverse of Madness. And I think all of this comes back to, I think Wanda's not dead. Because I feel like you still want to use this idea. There's still some good here, where Wanda is a great bad guy for a team-up movie. And you're still doing the Vision Quest show. If the Vision Quest show is still happening, then for what purpose? If you're not going to have that moment of Vision being back the way she knew, and Vision getting to break through to her, which is going to be inevitably what ends up happening, then what's the point of this show? What's the point of resurrect? Like, Vision is not an interesting character in the MCU. I'm sorry. He's only interesting as Wanda's husband. Wanda's the interesting character of the two. So if you're going to have him come back, it's like, if he's just going to... I don't think that Vision's going to have the same conflict in him that Wanda did without Vision. I don't think the two are as inexorable or inseparable from Vision's perspective as it is from Wanda's perspective. Because Vision, I don't think, goes postal on the MCU if Wanda dies. I think Vision fucking just murders whoever did it, but I don't think Vision takes an entire town hostage to play out a fantasy. If their powers were switched, I don't think Vision's going to sit there and take an entire town hostage and play this elaborate sitcom puppet show to make himself feel better. And therein lies kind of the issue that this movie the universe kind of has. Where it's like, great, you've killed off Wanda, but not really, because people, like, the cardinal rule of fiction in general is if there's no body, they're not dead. We did not see a body on Wanda. We did not see, we see the tower collapse, and this is something else that I wanted to note. That I did not note in, that I did not see. Well, I mean, look, I watched the movie in the theater. I've watched it at home once. I saw it in the theater twice. I saw it once, and then I brought my brother. I watched it at home once since then, and then this time when I watched it again, I was like, okay, let's sit down and really break down the scene. She decides to bring Wundagore down on her. And she does. She uses her magic to bring down the castle, the monument to the Scarlet Witch down on top of her. And in that moment, we see this little poof of red. And then I thought, there's something cool that you can do on Disney Plus. It's called descriptive audio, which I only know you can do because I've accidentally turned it on. And I turned it on, backtracked, and rewatched the scene. The descriptive audio never says Wanda died. If you're someone who is visually impaired watching this on, consuming this media with the descriptive audio, you don't know Wanda died in that scene. It's not that it's unclear. It's that they don't tell you she died. Which I think is the biggest indication that she's not dead. Because from a visual standpoint, when I watch this, there's no indication that she's, there's no indication. There's that poof of red. Like, why would she explode? Like, if that's what it is, why would she poof out in a little poof of red? And that's what her, and that's what her, it doesn't make sense for what that character is. Why would there be this poof of red? Like, it's not like if any time we saw a magician die or a wizard die at Kamar Taj earlier in the movie, there was this poof of whatever color of their magic color. It was just kind of like, why would that happen with Wanda? And I think that's just a manifestation of her using her powers to save her life. I think what we're going to end up with, and this is going to be the speculation going into Agatha all along. So we're about, how long are we into this? 23 minutes. At this point, we're going to speculate for Agatha all along. I've only seen both trailers, the first two trailers. I did not watch the later ones. Because that second trailer, I was like, all right. I think what's going to end up happening is one of those kids that's in this show, or the kid that's in this show, is going to be the spirit. I read somewhere that's meant to be the spirit of Billy or Tommy that has gone into this kid's body, and that is that he's going to want to get to the end of Witch's Road to bring back Wanda. And I think that putting Agatha in the MCU's kind of Darth Maul role, where she's kind of like, she's a bad guy. But at the end of the day, what she wants to, like, what Maul wants to stop the Emperor. Like, and that's why you get that great moment in the finale of Clone Wars where he's like, you have to stop him. Like, Ahsoka catches him after their fantastic fight in episode 2, and he's just like, you have to stop the Chancellor, the Emperor, or Darth Sidious. He has something planned. You are not ready for this. This is really bad. You don't know what you're getting into. And that is kind of a great moment for him, where he is like, I am here to, I'm here to stop you. Like, I want my own power, but at the same time, there's this greater evil that we need to address. And that is a great thing there. That's going to be Agatha's role, I think, where it's like, she's going to get him to the end. She's not going to know that this kid has related to Wanda, and then she's going to get to the end of Witch's Road. This kid's going to be like, oh, and by the way, now I'm, what I want at the end of Witch's Road, you want your magic back, I want my mother back. And that's going to bring back Wanda, bring back the Scarlet Witch, and then we're back to where we were at the end of that. But we'll wrap up there for today. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and all of WandaVision is available on Disney+. We'll be back on Monday with The Batman in prep for The Penguin coming back next week. And we'll be doing weekly episode discussions of Agatha All Along on, on Thursday mornings on Beware of Spoilers. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.